right? Friends, pay close attention to my words. A lady who chooses to live all on her own is far from weak. She isn't broken inside, right? She's definitely not just sitting around hoping someone will come to her rescue. No, she has already saved her very own self, right? And that particular truth usually makes others feel a bit uneasy. You see, there's a big lie this world truly loves to spread, right? That a woman without a man by her side is somehow not whole. But the real truth, the deep truth, right, is that some women find their greatest strength exactly when they are living by themselves, right? Some women truly discover who they are meant to be when all the outside noise stops and the room around them becomes very quiet, right? They can then hear their own thoughts with perfect clearness. They create their own rules for living. They move forward with clear intentions, right? People often say things like, she's much too quiet now, she's just different. But no, that's not it. She's sharply focused. She's truly grown and changed, right? She's no longer trying to explain her true worth to folks who simply can't grasp the depth of her spirit, right? This message isn't for those who need someone else's approval. It's especially for the women who already know exactly who they are, right? But perhaps just need a gentle reminder that walking your own path alone isn't a penalty. It's actually a wonderful privilege, right? If you're a woman who's tired of being misunderstood, tired of being unfairly labeled, tired of being judged for following your own chosen way, right, then this talk is meant for you. Stay with me, right? Because the honest truth you're about to hear will truly shift your thinking and deeply change how you carry yourself for the rest of your days, right? A woman who lives by herself is not someone to be felt sorry for, not someone to be questioned, and certainly not someone to be looked down upon, right? Her being alone isn't a failing. It's a clear choice, a thoughtful decision to shine in her own light without needing another person to hold the light for her, right? Society has taught people to wrongly connect being independent with feeling isolated. But these two things are absolutely not the same. One is about inner power, right? The other is about inner hurt. A woman living alone isn't in pain. She has found a way to exist beyond the loud disturbances, past the muddled mess, right? And above what others expect. She doesn't fear silence. She openly welcomes it. She isn't scared to step into a home that echoes, right? That echo is actually peace talking back to her. There's a true freedom in not needing someone else to make you complete, right? A woman who lives by herself doesn't need to ask anyone for permission to dream big, to build things, to rest when she needs to, or to rise up strong, right? She is the full owner of her time. She is the full owner of her space. She is the full owner of her energy. Being truly independent doesn't mean she rejects love. It doesn't mean she has any dislike for men, right? It simply means she has learned to value herself so deeply that she won't give up her inner peace just so she can say she has someone, right? She doesn't chase company because she's afraid to be alone. Instead, she creates solitude because it gives her strength, right? While many chase relationships to fill empty spaces within themselves, she focuses on filling herself up, right? Her presence is no longer defined by who is standing next to her. It's a true reflection of the person she has grown into when no one else was watching, right? People often guess that living alone means feeling lonely, but that's just them projecting their own feelings, right? It's hard for people who rely on others for their identity to understand the woman who built her own sense of self and quietness. She knows exactly who she is, right? Not because someone told her, but because she found it out the hard way through deep hurt, through difficult struggles, right? Through many long nights wondering about her own worth, and through the victory of rising up without anyone clapping for her, right? But this kind of self-reliance isn't loud or flashy. She doesn't need to post about it on social media. She doesn't need to announce it to everyone, right? She simply lives it. Every decision she makes, every step she takes comes from a place of deep self-trust. She has become her own safe haven, her own protection, right? Her own measure of what's right. When she speaks, her words come from knowing for sure, not from just guessing, right? She doesn't look for approval from others because she has already approved of herself. She doesn't look to anyone to give her life purpose, right? She has built her own purpose with her own two hands. And while others live for the weekend, for distractions, for company, just to avoid being by themselves, right? She has made friends with her solitude. She reads books. She thinks deeply. She makes plans. She heals her own wounds. Her private space is her sacred place, right? No one enters without a clear reason. No one stays without bringing true value. That isn't arrogance. It's a deep form of self-respect, right? That isn't being cold-hearted. It's having strong emotional control. She's simply done giving access to people who don't know what to do with it, right? What most people truly miss is this important point. When a woman chooses to live by herself, it's often not because she's scared of love, right? It's because she has deeply experienced what it means to love in the wrong ways, to love too much, right? To lose herself completely trying to help others who never showed up for her in return. She isn't bitter now. She isn't broken, right? She's simply finished living below her own high standards. She truly understands now that having inner peace is much better than pretending to be happy, right? Being by herself is much better than being completely drained of energy. She isn't chasing anything anymore. Instead, right, she's attracting everything that truly matches her new self. Her inner peace has become her personal filter. Her chosen solitude has become her smart strategy, right? She doesn't go where she's just barely tolerated anymore. She only walks where she is genuinely respected. If you can't meet her at her level, right, she won't lower herself to yours. Not because she thinks she's better than you, right, but because she's already been at that lower place and she knows the heavy cost of it. Living by herself has given her immense clarity, right? She knows exactly what she wants. And even more importantly, she knows exactly what she doesn't want. She doesn't entertain energy that confuses her mind, right? She doesn't waste precious time on people who drain her energy. She doesn't beg for anyone's attention. She doesn't compete for affection, right? Her only competition is against her past self, not against anyone else at all. Every single day for her is about personal growth, right? Every single moment is about finding inner calm. Every interaction she has is fully intentional. And this woman, the one who lives by herself, right? The one society labels as too strong, too far away, too different. She is the one who will fundamentally change everything. Not through loud protests, right? Not through open defiance, but through her steady presence, through her quiet power, through her unwavering self-discipline, right? She is the calm storm that they never saw approaching. She doesn't move with the crowd because she leads her own self, right? She doesn't settle for less because she is deeply patient. She isn't waiting for a perfect love to appear, right? She is actively preparing for a life that doesn't rely on it to be complete. She doesn't ignore love if it truly comes her way, right? She simply refuses to lose her true self for it. She knows that the kind of love she genuinely deserves will never ask her to dim her bright light, right? To shrink her unique voice or to soften her strong boundaries. And until that specific kind of love shows up, if it ever does, she will be perfectly fine, right? More than fine. She will genuinely thrive. She lives in true alignment, not in a state of frantic need. Her life feels full, not because of material possessions, right? But because of her rich inner world, the peace she finds in her own home, the way the morning light gently touches her face when she opens her window, right? The pure freedom in her daily routine, these are the true luxuries she cherishes now. She isn't seeking high status. She isn't obsessed with her public image, right? She is deeply invested in true substance. And when people whisper about her, saying, "She's all alone, isn't she?" they completely miss the real truth, right? She's not alone. She's surrounded by clear purpose, covered in quiet grace, and strongly protected by boundaries she built from past pain. She isn't lonely, right? She's carefully selective. She isn't waiting around. She's actively walking her path. She isn't hiding from anything. She's deeply healing herself, right? Because once a woman learns how to stand firmly on her own 2 feet, she transforms into a solid foundation. Once she discovers deep peace in solitude, right? Chaos no longer attracts her at all. Once she truly understands her own worth, the cheap noise of the world no longer pulls her attention away, right? She becomes a different kind of person. Unshakable, undeniable, completely unapologetic. This is the honest truth about women who live by themselves, right? Without a man, they are not lost, they are not forgotten. They are not less than anyone else. They are the true architects of their own lives, right? And while the world might not understand them, they don't need it to, right? They are far too busy building lasting legacies that don't need anyone's approval to be truly great, right? Because the woman who walks her path alone isn't walking away from something. She's walking powerfully ahead, right? Self-sufficiency in a woman isn't just about paying her own bills or living in her own place. It goes much deeper than that, right? It's about having complete control over her emotions, her thought or spirit, right? A woman who is truly self-sufficient has made a firm decision to no longer rely on anyone else for her happiness, her safety, or her identity, right? She has learned how to carry her own emotional burdens, how to speak life into her own spirit, right? And how to be her own strong anchor when the world tries to shake her foundations. Being self-sufficient doesn't mean she rejects help from others, right? It simply means she no longer needs it for her basic survival. It means she knows how to navigate life, whether she has support or not, right? She's been in situations where she was overlooked, not valued enough, and underestimated. And yet, despite all that, she still showed up, stood tall, right? And handled her responsibilities. That kind of inner strength doesn't come from reading books. It comes from real life experience, right? From surviving difficult storms that were meant to break her, but instead built her into something solid, something deeply rooted, something truly unshakable, right? There's a quiet strength that lives inside self-sufficient women. It's not boastful or showy. It doesn't loudly demand attention. It moves in silence, right? But its presence is absolutely clear and undeniable. She doesn't have to prove her worth to anyone. She simply embodies it. The way she walks, right? The way she holds her personal space, right? The way she says no without any hesitation. All these actions speak volumes about the deep inner work she has done on herself, right? She's been through periods where she had to be everything for herself, her own provider, protector, motivator, and healer. And because of those experiences, right, she doesn't give up easily. She's built on a foundation of deep resilience. She doesn't fall apart when plans don't work out or when people leave her, right? She adjusts. She reevaluates. She finds another way forward. She understands that life will test her, but it cannot truly define her, right? Only she has the power to do that. Her self-sufficiency is her shield. It keeps her from falling into the traps of relying on others, right? Where many lose themselves trying to please everyone else. She doesn't look for a relationship to fix her. She brings a whole, right, complete version of herself into it. And if that relationship doesn't align with her inner peace, she walks away with grace. Not with bitterness, not with regret, right? Just with clear understanding. That level of self-discipline isn't taught in schools. It's earned. Earned through sleepless nights, through financial pressures, right? Through emotional breakdowns she had to talk herself through. While others called friends for help, she sat in her silence and figured things out for herself, right? While others waited to be saved, she became her own savior. And because of that, she trusts herself more than she trusts the outside world, right? She doesn't fear starting over because she's done it before. She doesn't fear being by herself because she knows how to genuinely enjoy her own company, right? She doesn't fear challenges because she's built stronger muscles through facing hardship, right? That deep self-sufficiency gives her the ability to move freely and without constraint. She's not tied to specific outcomes, right? She's not controlled by anyone's opinions or thoughts. She makes decisions based on what truly aligns with her own growth, not based on fear or insecurity, right? This quality can make some people feel uneasy because the truth is, a woman who needs nothing from you is very hard to control, right? She's not impressed by high status. She doesn't chase popularity or fame. She's not flattered by superficial attention, right? What truly gets her attention is energy that matches hers, purpose-driven, truly authentic and steady. She's not playing games. She's not wasting valuable time, right? She's building something important in a world that often teaches women to be dependent, to wait, to rely on others, to make themselves smaller, right? She does the complete opposite. She expands her horizons. She leads her own way. She takes up her rightful space without any apologies, right? She knows that her life is entirely her own responsibility and she doesn't run away from it. She embraces it fully and completely, right? That is precisely why she can seem quite formidable. Not because she wants to hurt anyone, but because she doesn't need others to feel complete, right? She can walk into a room full of couples and not feel anything lacking within herself. She can sit at her own table and eat in perfect peace, right? She can work on her goals without telling everyone about them. She can love herself deeply without needing anyone to clap for her, right? Her sense of self-worth doesn't come from compliments. It comes from being in alignment with her true self, right? She knows exactly who she is when no one else is watching. That's the kind of woman who truly changes generations, right? Her self-sufficiency isn't about having a big ego. It's about her evolution as a person. It's about knowing that, at the end of the day, right, she fully has her own back. And because she trusts herself so deeply, she doesn't beg for explanations or closure. She doesn't need long, detailed explanations, right? If something doesn't serve her well, she lets it go and simply keeps moving forward. That's the kind of strength that makes her unstoppable, right? She doesn't look for someone to complete her. She looks for someone who can walk beside her without slowing her down, right? She doesn't settle for chaotic relationships just to avoid feeling lonely. Her inner peace is too valuable. Her personal growth is too precious, right? She knows the true cost of making compromises, and she's not willing to pay that price anymore. That's why she's beyond reach in a way, right? Not because she thinks she's better than anyone, but because she has mastered the deep art of standing strong on her own, right? She's not worried about being chosen by someone else. She chooses herself every single day. She's not competing with anyone, right? She's constantly creating her own life. Her life isn't a reaction to external events. It's a true masterpiece in motion. She feels pain sometimes. She gets tired, right? She has moments of doubt. But the key difference is she doesn't stay stuck there. She feels it, faces it directly, and then gets back up again, right? She knows how to rebuild herself from within. She doesn't crumble under pressure. She becomes sharper instead. That's what makes her truly rare, right? She invests deeply in herself. She reads, she learns, she grows. She surrounds herself with quiet, not because she avoids people, right? But because she's very selective. She knows her energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. She doesn't need a crowd of people to feel seen, right? She sees herself clearly now, and once a woman reaches that level of inner clarity, there's no going back to her old ways. Self-sufficiency is true freedom, right? It's immense power. It's deep peace. It's knowing that your entire world won't fall apart when someone walks away, right? It's building a life so rich and full that anyone who joins it simply becomes a wonderful bonus, not a necessary lifeline, right? The self-sufficient woman isn't just surviving, she's truly flourishing. She's living proof that when you stop depending on others to complete you, right, you become the kind of person who can't be broken by life's difficulties. You become whole. And when a woman becomes truly whole, right, she transforms into a powerful force, a quiet, steady, relentless force that simply cannot be stopped. Society has always been afraid of what it cannot control, right? And nothing threatens old expectations more than a woman who chooses to live alone, walk her path alone, and build her life alone, right? She doesn't fit the mold the world designed for her. She doesn't play by the rules written to keep her dependent, uncertain, or constantly needing approval, right? That kind of woman is unsettling to those who are used to women being obedient, silent, and always sacrificing for others. They don't understand her confidence, right? Her choices or her calm demeanor. So instead of trying to understand her, they try to shame her. They label her as difficult, cold, too proud, right? Or too independent. They question her femininity, her happiness, her worth, just because she refuses to let someone else define her by their expectations, right? The moment a woman decides she doesn't need a man to complete her, society starts to panic. Not because she's wrong, right? But because she's truly waking up to her own inherent power. And when a woman steps fully into her power, right, she becomes immune to being controlled by anything that once tried to limit her. The fear doesn't come from her being alone, right? It comes from the realization that she no longer needs anyone's approval to simply exist. She no longer relies on traditional roles to define her identity, right? She's no longer attached to outdated beliefs that say a woman is only valuable when she's someone's partner, someone's mother, or someone's servant, right? She is valuable simply because she exists. She owns her personal space, her voice, her unique vision for the future, right? And that kind of self-ownership makes her unassailable in a world that thrives on insecurity and dependence. She stops putting up with disrespectful behavior, right? She stops lowering her own standards just to feel accepted. She no longer pretends to be smaller so others can feel bigger or more important, right? That strong stance truly frightens people because now they can't make her feel guilty, bribe her, or flatter her into submission, right? She no longer bows her head just to keep a false sense of peace. Her peace is now internal. It's not something she has to beg for from others, right? It's something she actively protects. When a woman is truly free, her quietness becomes more powerful than another person's loud shouting, right? Her presence becomes more commanding than any title she could hold. She walks into a room and doesn't seek attention, yet everyone's eyes still follow her, right? Not because of how she looks, but because of the deep stability, clarity, and certainty she radiates. That kind of energy can't be faked, right? It's earned through hard work. It's created through time spent alone, through difficult lessons, through choosing herself again and again, right? Even when it would have been much easier to just settle for less, the world fears that kind of woman because she can't be controlled by making her feel lonely, right? She's already faced her deepest self in the dark. She's already learned how to eat by herself, sleep by herself, cry by herself, heal by herself, right? And rise strong by herself. That kind of woman cannot be broken by anyone's absence. She doesn't chase anyone. She doesn't beg for love or affection, right? She loves herself with such fierceness that any love not deeply rooted in mutual respect feels foreign and wrong to her. She's not bitter now. She's truly wise, right? She's not arrogant. She's deeply experienced. She's not angry. She's wide awake. And when a woman truly wakes up, she starts moving through life differently, right? She stops asking for directions from people who have never been where she's going. She stops explaining herself to people who are determined to misunderstand her, right? She stops making herself smaller to fit into places she has clearly outgrown. This major shift in her energy, this profound transformation, right, makes her unpredictable to those who once thought they could easily control her. She no longer reacts in the old ways she used to, right? She doesn't argue just to be heard. She doesn't explain just to be understood. She doesn't fight for her space. She creates her very own space, right? And because she's no longer trapped by the fear of being alone, she becomes impossible to control through any kind of manipulation, right? People now call her various names. They say she's become hardened, too independent, too selective, right? But what they don't see is that behind her outward strength is a journey filled with betrayal, deep heartbreak, disappointment, and personal sacrifice, right? She has bravely fought through years of being ignored, misunderstood, and taken for granted. Her hard-won freedom was bought with long periods of silence, right? Many tears and difficult decisions that seemed to tear her apart just so she could rebuild herself in a stronger, better way, right? The woman society once tried to shame into submission is now powerfully rising beyond its grasp, right? She's no longer passively waiting for the world to give her permission to speak, to move, or to dream big. She's doing it anyway, right? Regardless of what anyone thinks, and the world, especially those who are used to controlling women through fear or old traditions, right, doesn't know how to handle that. They can't understand how she lives by herself and still smiles. How she works incredibly hard and never complains, right? How she sets firm boundaries without feeling guilty. How she walks away from toxic love without any hesitation, right? How she consistently chooses peace over pressure every single time. They wrongly interpret her inner peace as arrogance. They confuse her strength with a big ego, right? But she's not acting superior. She's simply not apologizing for finally putting herself first in her own life, right? In a culture where a woman is often taught to constantly give until there's absolutely nothing left of herself. This woman made a clear, right, conscious decision to pour back into herself. She decided to rest when it was needed, to grow without asking anyone for permission, to dream without any limits, right? That particular stance frightens people, because once a woman starts truly living for her own self, they lose all control over her, right? She's not afraid to say no anymore, not out of rebellion, but out of deep wisdom, right? She's not afraid to be misunderstood because she's no longer trying to be liked by every single person, right? She truly understands that being genuinely free means being fully herself, even if it makes others feel uncomfortable, right? And especially if it makes others feel uncomfortable. Freedom isn't just the ability to make choices, right? It's the profound courage to walk away from absolutely anything that violates her spirit. And that's a skill she has mastered completely, right? She no longer romanticizes difficult struggles. She no longer glamorizes toxic, harmful love. She knows now that if something costs her inner peace, right, it's far too expensive for her. And she steadfastly refuses to pay that price with her very soul. The fear society has of her isn't rooted in who she truly is, right? It's rooted in what she represents to the world. She's living proof that a woman doesn't need to be tied to a man, a specific role, right? Or a societal label to be whole and complete. She's subtly rewriting the entire narrative in her quiet way. Not by giving lectures, right? But by simply living her truth. Not by seeking approval, but by staying in true alignment with herself. Not by following old rules, right? But by honoring her own deep truth. She walks with a stillness that speaks louder than any noise, right? She carries herself with an inherent grace that cannot be bought or sold. Her very existence is her message, and that message is crystal clear, right? She belongs to no one but her own self. That's what makes her formidable. That's what gives her immense power, right? And that is precisely why the world fears her profound freedom. She's not just sitting by the window counting the days, waiting for someone to come save her, right? She's not building her entire life around the hope that one day someone will arrive and bring meaning to her existence, right? That old version of her no longer exists at all. The woman she has progressively become no longer waits passively. She actively grows. She continually evolves, right? She keeps rising. She's not living in a holding pattern, waiting for love, for validation, for a man. She's living fully for herself every single day, right? People mistakenly assume she's incomplete because she walks her path alone. But she is not a half. She is not a fragment of something. She is a full, right, complete world in motion, constantly developing, learning, refining herself. Not because she has to, but because she chooses to with deep intention, right? The solitude in her life isn't stagnation. It's dynamic movement. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean nothing important is happening. In that profound silence, right? In that deep stillness, she is doing the crucial internal work that so many others avoid. She's deeply healing. She's sharpening her abilities, right? She's carefully planting seeds that will bloom into the next beautiful chapter of her greatness. This is not a woman who has been left behind by life, right? This is a woman who has deliberately stepped ahead. She no longer sees her single status as a curse. She sees it as a source of profound clarity, right? Clarity to think deeply, to dream big, to build a life that doesn't bend under pressure or compromise because of desire. She knows exactly who she is becoming, right? And she adamantly refuses to allow anything or anyone to distract her from that powerful path. Every morning she wakes up with clear purpose, right? Her daily routines aren't about being vain. They are about maintaining her inner alignment. She doesn't chase anyone, right? She doesn't crave chaos disguised as companionship. Her focused attention is sacred. Her time is incredibly precious. She gives it only where it's truly deserved, right? But the world might call her too independent. But that's just a code word for she doesn't settle for less. They say she's hard to love, right? But what they really mean is she's hard to fool or manipulate. She doesn't fall for mere words without real action. She doesn't invest in unproven potential, right? She doesn't ignore obvious red flags just to feel a transient warmth at night, right? She would much rather be alone in peace than tangled in a relationship that costs her her voice, her power, or her profound purpose. Love to her, right, is not something to chase relentlessly. It's something that must arrive with absolute integrity, or not at all, right? She distinctly remembers the version of herself who gave far too much. The one who put up with less than she deserved just to feel wanted, right? The one who dimmed her own light to make others feel more comfortable. That woman lived inside her for a while, but she's gone now, right? What remains is someone who no longer begs to be seen. She sees herself clearly. She no longer waits for someone else to remind her of her worth, right? She's meticulously written it into every single corner of her life. She's not rushing anything. There is no sense of urgency in her measured steps, right? She knows that what is truly meant for her will not pass her by. In the meantime, she's diligently building a life so fulfilling, so complete, right? That any love that arrives must be ready to perfectly match it, or it simply won't make it past her front door. That isn't arrogance, right? That's profound self-respect. That's what happens when a woman has been broken before and has firmly decided never to break for the wrong reasons ever again, right? Growth is her guiding rhythm now. She grows through consistent discipline, not through distracting herself. She reads deeply. She reflects profoundly, right? She learns continuously. She invests in herself not to impress anyone, but to genuinely improve. She works not just for money, but for profound meaning, right? Her goals are not merely decorative. They are meticulously deliberate. Every single step she takes is rooted in clear intention, right? There's nothing random or accidental about the way she moves through life. Even in solitude, she's actively building something beautiful and lasting, right? The world doesn't always applaud this kind of woman. In fact, it often criticizes her openly. She's told she's too focused, too distant, too unavailable, right? But none of that criticism touches her anymore. She has truly outgrown the need to be understood by those who haven't put in the hard internal work themselves, right? She doesn't seek permission from anyone to grow. She doesn't require external acceptance to evolve into her best self. Her immediate social circle is smaller now, right? Not because she's antisocial or dislikes people, but because she's very intentional about who she lets in. She surrounds herself with peace, right? Not with distracting noise, with people who inspire her, not those who drain her energy, with energy that perfectly matches hers, right? Not energy that pulls her backward. She has learned that being alone isn't truly lonely when you're in good company with your own self, right? She genuinely enjoys her solitude because it's real, because it's safe, because it's honest. She is not against love or affection. She welcomes it wholeheartedly, right? But it must arrive with true integrity, not with false illusions. With unwavering commitment, not with mere convenience. With profound purpose, right? Not with superficial performance. And until that profound alignment happens, she's not passively waiting. She's diligently preparing. Preparing her mind, right? Her physical space, her very spirit. She's becoming the woman who won't just be loved deeply. She'll be profoundly respected, vigilantly protected, right? And joyfully celebrated, because that is precisely what she offers to the world, and that is exactly what she expects in return, right? There's immense power in knowing that you don't have to compromise who you truly are just to be with someone, right? There's incredible freedom in realizing that solitude isn't emptiness. It's actually wholeness skillfully disguised, right? She has taken that profound truth and transformed it into her unwavering standard. She doesn't fear being alone because her life isn't incomplete, right? It's a continuous work in progress. Every single chapter is intentional. Every single day is purposeful. She's not passively waiting for love to complete her, right? She's diligently building a life so full and rich that any love that comes must rise to meet her at that level. And when it comes, if it comes at all, right? It will be a beautiful addition, not the fundamental foundation. Because her foundation is already incredibly strong, is already deeply stable, is already entirely hers. The woman who is not waiting is the woman who is constantly becoming wiser, becoming clearer, becoming truly unstoppable, right? There is nothing passive about her personal journey. There is nothing stagnant about her chosen quietude. While others wonder what she's doing with her time, right? She's actively creating an entire world that perfectly reflects her profound growth. She's the woman who used to question her own self, right? Now she questions the world that tried to convince her she wasn't enough on her own. She used to overextend herself, over-explain everything, right? Overcompensate for others. Now she simply aligns with what serves her or gracefully walks away. No drama, no resentment, just clear direction, right? This is the significant season of her becoming. She's not interested in impressing anyone. She's not obsessed with being chosen, right? She is intensely focused on becoming the woman who doesn't need to be rescued, praised, or pursued to feel completely whole, right? She is the woman who consistently shows up for herself, who consistently chooses herself, who meticulously builds herself. And that woman, right? The one who isn't waiting but actively growing is the one who changes everything quietly, powerfully, permanently. She doesn't raise her voice loudly, right? But her silent presence speaks far louder than any noise. She doesn't argue to prove her worth, and she doesn't need to shout to be truly heard.